Cell phone camera rolling.
Okay.
Let's see.
Current Invader Corporal Jesse Rodriguez, U.S. Army, A-129th RCT Rifleman.
Okay, the Panasonic G is rolling. You guys can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
All right, give us a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Corporal Jesse Rodriguez. Hello, everyone.
Or do you want me to start it off?
No, I got to start off with the big dog with the podcast. Hello, everybody. This is Mariano Big Dog. Ready? You let me know when it's.
They're both rolling.
Oh, really?
Whenever you're ready.
Hello, everybody. This is Mariano Big Dog from Big Dog's Corner. And today's special guest is Korean War veteran Corporal Jesus Rodriguez, U.S. Army, A-129th RCT Rifleman. It is a pleasure and an honor. I've known Jess for a couple of years, actually. And he's one of the most decorated veterans that I know of here in La Habra. So Jess, can you tell us about where you grew up, what school you went to, and why you joined the Army, and what happened while you were in Korea?
Okay. I grew up in downtown LA. When I say downtown, it's down by the Civic Center, around Chinatown, La Placita Church. I used to live off of Grand and Alpine. I went to Alpine Grammar School. Then I ended up going to Belmont High School up to the 11th grade. And I wasn't very good at school, so I decided I wanted to go into service. But I was thinking about the service since I was around 14. And as soon as my 17th birthday rolled around, I told my mother that I wanted to go into service. Well, I gave her an ultimatum. Either I could buy a car or go in the Army. And she didn't want me to have a car. She said, well, why don't you buy a motorcycle? And I said, no, I don't want a motorcycle. And the reason being that if you had a car, you have a lot of girls hanging around. You either have to know how to dance or you have to have a car. Otherwise, you were out in the snow. So I ended up going in the Army. And how it happened was, it was 1949, and they were trying to bring back a lot of the soldiers that had been in the Second World War, but they had to have replacements. So they were trying to hustle whatever they could. They used to go to high schools and take you out to lunch and give you the pitch, education, travel, the same old bull. So they didn't have to bullshit me because I wanted to go. So I gave them an ultimatum. I said, if I sign up, can I go to Japan? I want to go to the 1st Cavalry Division. And why? Because a lot of guys in the neighborhood had already been there and came back, and they enjoyed it. So what did they enjoy? The drinking and the girls. I mean, that's what it was all about. So I signed up, and at that time, the basic training was 17 weeks. And in those 17 weeks, they would try to weed out the guys that they thought were not fit to be soldiers. So here I'm trying to get out of school, and that's what it was all about: training, learning the compass, learning all kinds of manuals, weapons, and you had to stay awake in these classes, And at that time, they still had corporal punishment.
Oh, wow.
And corporal punishment was they could physically beat you up.
Wow.
So I said to myself, I'm going to pass this 17 weeks one way or another because I'm not going back home. So the only thing that used to give me a hard time was they had a confidence course, which was a physical course, where you had to run up and scale these walls that were an incline, and there was a big hole already dug from the guys jumping for months. So it was harder for me to pull myself over. And then they had the monkey bars that were made for guys with monkey arms, you know, long ones. And that didn't go over too good, but I made it happen. Then they had these 2 telephone poles that went up, and they had these 6x8s bolted on the side, and you'd have to get up there, and you could barely get your hand on the next one. You had to pull yourself over, and you had to go over the top and come down. And it was all sand on the bottom. And there was always a couple of wise guys that got up on top, and they would do this and make that thing sway, you know. And there's a lot of guys that don't know that they're afraid of heights till they have to do something like that.
Yeah, so that's good so far. I just cut it off, yeah. Just so I can give it a break, you know what I mean? 'Cause
The cell phone's rolling.
and back to your first assignment and what happened as you went to Korea.
Well, after basic, I went to Camp Stoneman, and that was a repo depot for the APO to go overseas. And they put us on a ferry, went down to Oakland. They gave us a box lunch. And on this ferry, when we docked, we had to sit there and wait for us to get on the boat. And with that rocking, everybody started to get seasick, and we hadn't even gotten on the ship. Anyway, to make a long story short, we got on the ship. It was 17 days to get to Japan, but it was around Thanksgiving, and we ran into a typhoon. And they tried to bullshit us, you know, that they told us that we're going to run into a little rough weather, but that we were changing our course and we were going to outrun this bad weather. You don't outrun a typhoon. So I remember that it was bad. I mean, I thought that ship was going to crack in half. And
Was it a small ship, a big ship?
well, it's a big troop ship.
Oh, right.
But in the ocean, it's just like a cork, you know, that I don't care how big the ship is. And those big waves, if you hit them sideways, they'll roll you over. You got to go into the waves. But anyway, it was Thanksgiving, and in the mess hall, when you went to eat, they had this stainless steel table, and you stood and ate. And I remember that when it rolled, all the trays would come like that, and I just grabbed my turkey leg and hanged on to it. Everybody got sick. Anyway, the ship stops in Okinawa, and they read the roster off, and so many guys got off, and I was one of them. I didn't make it to Japan proper. I went to Okinawa. And in a way, they did me a favor. You may ask me why. Because it was a spit and polish outfit. I mean, you polish your boots. I had all my uniforms tailored, all the pockets sewed. Everything was stamped. And when you went on guard, they had a supernumerary, which the best dressed soldier and the one that knew his general orders and the current events would get pulled off, and you would be the colonel's orderly the next day. And when you reported there, you report to the sergeant there, sergeant major, and then he'd tell you to sit there. And when the colonel came out, you opened the door. If he went to his car, you opened the door. You closed the door, you sat in the front seat. That was for one day. And for that, they would give you a 3-day pass. At one time, I had 3 passes back to back. And those guys that had been there for a year and never got one, but they never soldiered. So I made it my business to, that's how I could get out of details. Keep my nose clean and make sure that I was sober for reveille. Because you became a rice paddy daddy, you know, going over the hill into the village every night. So what happened was the Korean War broke out. And I told one of my buddies, man, I wish we could volunteer to go to Korea and get out of this chicken shit outfit, you know? No. Before you knew it, we were on alert, and the whole regiment was going to Korea. Now, we weren't ready for this war, so they didn't have any way to get us to Korea. So what they brought in a Japanese freighter that didn't have no bunks, didn't have nothing. We slept on the deck, and there wasn't any lifeboats, and there wasn't any life preservers. And we had an escort, a British ship and an American ship. And to me, man, this was exciting, you know, looking over the fantail, looking all around, Medici, you know. And all of a sudden, these 2 ships, the lights started to go on and the whistles like in the John Wayne movies, boop, 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 and they started shooting depth charges. They got a Russian ship, a submarine. And the sergeant that was in charge of us, he was going to jump overboard. And I said, what the hell for? He says, man, if they torpedo us, we're all dead fish. Then I said to myself, hey, they must be business, you know, this is getting dangerous. But anyway, they got sub. We made it to Busan, and we were supposed to get some training before we went online, but things were going so bad that they just brought us up to line.
So what is, yeah, there you go.
And the Samsung S8 Plus is rolling.
Now we're back to leaving at Busan. You arriving there, and you're coming on the ship to Busan.
Okay, so we unload off the ship, and we go into a school, and they had a fence all the way around it, and that's where I saw the first guy get injured. On these trucks that we were on, they used to have a ring around the top of the roof behind the driver, and they had a .50 caliber on there. And this guy dropped the .50 down like that, and it had a round in the chamber, and it went off and hit a guy in the leg. I said, oh, man. So then we're in Korea. We don't have maps. We don't know anything. We don't know the language. Don't know nothing. And every time 2 or 3 officers would get together, something was coming down. So when we first got there, it was so hot that I had an idea to cut the sleeves off my fatigue shirt. And that was a mistake. I got a 2nd-degree sunburn in one day. The next thing was the mosquitoes. You could see them coming at you. They were that big. And if there was 3 or 4 guys standing together, they'd hit me first. They'd hit you around the knuckles, the elbows, and you get whelps. So we're scrambling around there, and we're supposed to train a little bit before we're supposed to go to start fighting. But the fighting was so intense that they moved us up to the front. and we were supposed to go up to Tejon, and the 29th was attached to the 19th Regiment of the 24th Division because the 29th was a bastard regiment, didn't have a division. So we were attached to the 19th Regiment of the 24th Division. And within a month, both regiments were wiped out, And I was a survivor of that. One of there was only, with the 29th, there was only 2 battalions.
How many soldiers are in a regiment? How many soldiers?
In a regiment?
Yeah, 1,000, 500?
Well, 1,500 maybe.
1,500 in a regiment. Wow,
maybe.
That's a lot of people.
Well.
So one regiment was lost?
Battalion. Or 2 regiments were lost, but the 29th, they lost a battalion. They lost 700 guys in one day.
Wow.
They got ambushed, and they tried to jump in the river, and they shot them as they swam down the river. So we make it back. We cross the Necktown River. Now we're on the Necktown River, and that's the Pusan perimeter. And we fight there for a couple of months before the Incheon landing. Then we started to move up. But by that time, I got sick with malaria, and it was I would never miss a meal. But when I got sick with malaria, I skipped a meal. I was that sick, and the thing that I used to worry about was having water and ammunition. That's I didn't care about eating as long as I could have ammunition to fight with and water to keep from getting thirsty. So you had to learn your skill right away. Now, I was 18 years old, and my squad leader must have been around 30. And I decided that he was a dumb dipstick, and he wasn't going to get me killed. So I became the squad leader, and I told him what to do. And what it consisted of was when we went into the attack, I led the way, and the 8 men behind me better be behind me. And if you start to slack off, get the fuck up here, And if you had to, you hit them with the butt of your rifle and make them move. So as long as you were working as a team, you got things done. So I ended up with an all-Mexican squad, and with the exception of one soldier who was a wannabe. He was a Jew from East LA, and he was one of the guys with 2 Gonzalez cousins that got hit at one time, and I lost half of my squad. Even though they were kicking our ass, they used to send us out on patrol every day, and we would ask, well, how come? He said, well, to keep the enemy off balance. It was bullshit.
So the squad, how many guys
9.
did you have in the squad? 9?
9.
So you lost half of the squad.
Yeah.
So there was only half of you guys there. That's...
Yeah.
4?
Yeah. But then we started to get replacements. The army was segregated. We didn't have any blacks, but when they started to scrape the barrel, we got some black guys in. And they say there wasn't segregation. I have my orders, and on the roster, as my name came down, I had a Japanese friend. It said George Mitsufuka, Jap. Jesus Rodriguez, Mex. So what does that tell you? They were keeping tabs on us.
Yes.
So my mentor was a sergeant named Sergeant Hubert Baker. And we hit it off pretty good. The day that the Gonzalez and the Jewish kid got hit, he got hit too. But prior to that, what used to scare me a lot was at night, they would blow these horns and cymbals and flares, and they'd all come hollering, you know. So they used to scare the hell out of me. So one day I started to get up and holler, and the Sergeant Baker asked me, well, what the hell, what's wrong with you, you know? I said, man, those guys terrify me. I thought maybe if I did it, they would get scared, you know. But later I realized that those dongs and cymbals, that was a communications. They didn't have radios like we did. They had trumpets, and they would signal with trumpets, with dongs and all kinds of, you know, that was the communications.
Like Morse code?
No, you know, forward, retreat. I mean,
okay.
yeah, get up and fight, you know. So we had to learn our trade fast. If you're not, you weren't going to make it. After the Incheon landing, it started to get cold. And we went over in our summer uniforms, and the winter started to come in, and that's all we had was our summer clothing. So then people started to get frostbite. We didn't have the proper boots. And I was a greenhorn. I never went to the snow. My first snow was in Korea. And my boots got wet. And I put them next to the fire. And I got frostbite. And these hillbillies got some snow, and they rubbed my feet and made me walk in the snow to get my circulation going again. Anyway, when I went back to get my boots next to the fire, they were hard and they shrunk. So the next thing I did was I got some burlap sacks that we used to make sandbags, and I wrapped these burlap sacks around my feet, and the next morning I walked down to the road, and the refugees was coming by, and I was looking for some guy with big feet. So here comes this guy, and he's got these rubber boots like the firemen have, and I pointed my rifle at him, and just with a hand motions, I told him to give me the boots. I gave him my shrunken boots, and I took his rubber boots. And then I noticed he had a belt, a leather belt like they used to have in the blouses in the army in the Second World War.